All right, we're
All
live.
right. Hi, good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me. We are here today to talk about open source, and we have two people with us. Um, we have Stuti from the ABI staff, who's helping organize Open Source Day at Grace Hopper, and we have Bithika, who is one of the co-chairs of the Open Source Committee. And she is an entrepreneur and principal architect um, at Cisco. And she's responsible for bringing market solutions around disruptive technologies and most recently SDN. She's an ambassador at the Anita Borg Institute and is intimately involved with shaping different program tracks at the Grace Hopper celebration. For the past 2 years, she's been involved with Open Source Day.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. So, welcome everyone. I know I cannot see your faces. Wish this was a little bit more interactive, but what Stuti and I had for you today was we sort of just wanted to introduce you to the Grace Hopper Open Source Day track, which is, I believe, on the starting day, actually on Wednesday. Just wanted to give you a perspective on what we are going to bring to you on that specific day, and really just a way for you folks to get started with open source, because it's just so fantastic to be able to use your skills as programmers and give back, make the world a little bit better by coding. So with that, Stuti and I prepared a set of slides, so we're going to share that, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So let me do that. Hope you can see my slides. So what we did for these slides is really an introduction to Open Source Day. And when I talk about anything, I really want to talk about the why. Why do we really do it, right? That's really the inspiring piece that makes us get out of bed every day and do what we do, whether that's our job, whether that's programming, whether that's taking a class in school or something else. But with Open Source Day specifically, it's something that really attracts us a lot is because I think it's really a way for us to use technology to shape the world, to change the world a little bit, to make the world a little better, right? So imagine a world where you could use technology to safely navigate people out of natural disasters. So there is an organization that's been participating with Grace Hopper Open Source Day ever since we started this track in the Grace Hopper conference. Sahana, that would be participating this year as well. There are a few other organizations like Microsoft Disaster Response and Instead that are participating this year that are developing tools and technologies to help navigate people out of natural disasters, share crisis response data with journalists and technologists, so you are able to save more human lives using technology. Imagine a world, another use case, right? Imagine a world where in a geodiverse collaboration, you're sort of collaborating or coding in collaboration with women in Haiti, where you're creating technologies to fight violence against women. This is, again, a program that we have been doing as part of Grace Hopper Open Source Day for quite some time now. I know we did it last year and the year before, and it's a fantastic way to be able to do this code development, if you will, across geographies, across borders, internationally, with some women in the Grace Hopper Open Source Day and the others in Haiti coding together, right? Imagine a world where you could actually build an open source cloud, and you could store data on the cloud that provides rapid response to crisis data that could be used for analytics, for big data, for crisis response and planning, and you could actually access and use that data anytime, anywhere. And since this is open source, it's fantastic for nonprofits because they could get this infrastructure up and running quickly, and they could also get it for a fraction of a cost. Instead of going through a closed source commercial version, they could use the open source version. And you could actually be a part of doing the coding, the development, the bug fixes, and the features to enable some of these technologies. So as you can see, this is really a fantastic way not only to hone your skills in terms of programming and creating an online presence, if you will, and really building up your resume, but really taking these skills and using it to make the world a little bit better. So I think that's really is the draw of this the specific open source day program that we have at Grace Hopper Conference. So Stuti, do you want to talk a little bit about our program this year?
I do. Thanks, Vithika, for that great introduction. And yes, I just want to talk briefly about what we have planned for Open Source Day at Grace Hopper this year. So we're doing it a little differently this year than we have in the past, and we're very excited about that. We have two separate tracks. One are the 101 sessions, which is a first come, first serve, and the other one is the Codeathon for Humanity. And the 101 sessions are a great way to, it's you know, they're geared towards beginners, and it's a great way to start off learning about open source. And we're very excited about our 101 sessions. This is the first year that we're doing it, and we're sure that everybody is really going to have a great experience and learn a lot from the 101 sessions. And the Codeathon for Humanity, of course, is our collaborative Codeathon, and Vithika did touch upon some of the projects that are involved in the Codeathon for Humanity. And we've had an unprecedented demand for the Codeathon, and we are sold out. However, I do want to say that on the day of Grace Hopper, please do swing by because we do get some no-shows. We can't guarantee you a spot, but you may be lucky, and somebody may not show up, and you may get a spot at the Codeathon. Another great way to learn about open source in general, as well as some of the as well as the participating orgs and some of their missions, is during lunchtime at the lunchtime table topics. And these are held on Thursday and Friday from 1 to 2:15 p.m. And it's basically a time for people who are interested in open source or some of the projects that the participating orgs are conducting. Just it's a great way to, in an intimate setting, to learn more about open source. Off to you, Vithika.
Thank you, Stuti. That was a great description of the program that we have this year. And it's really, truly exciting because if you think about it, what we have done is created two separate tracks, one for folks who are new to open source and would really like to get a hang of how do I get started with open source, right? What are actually the projects that might be easy enough and interesting enough to be able to get started? So we are going to provide that track with our 101 sessions. And I'll talk a little bit more about the specific sessions that we're doing there as well. And then for the more seasoned veterans, if you will, you could actually jump right into the Codeathons and participate in the 7 different organizations that are participating this year. So with the Codeathon for Humanity, we have 7 organizations, and we have 8 hours of really intense sorry, we're not allowed to use the word hackathon anymore, so we have to say Codeathon. So we have these 7 organizations participating. They are doing a variety of programs or a variety of development activities and bug fixes, going from Android operating system based SMS application to creating this open data store to sort of store crisis response data with OpenStack and with Microsoft Disaster Response. And with Sahana, they do some work around how do you sort of make this type of crisis data available easily, in sort of a map format, easily available to be able to help people out of natural disaster scenarios. And then there is Sisters, which a lot of you might be familiar with. Started out as a mailing list, and now it's really grown to provide an online community for women in computing. And this year, they are actually collaborating with Peace Corps to develop some technologies for Peace Corps. Ushahidi has been participating with us a lot for quite a few years as well, and their activity is also around crisis response and things of that nature. Women's Peer-to-Peer Network is also one of our veterans as far as participating in the Open Source Day track. They are the ones who actually facilitate this collaboration over Skype with women in Haiti. And this year they are starting this new track to develop technology to prevent violence against women. So that's sort of the new thing that they're doing. These projects, you can find more detailed information on our website. but they have a variety of projects around bug fixes, which is sort of a good way to get an overview of what the development environment is and do some sort of easy bug fixes to get started with the technologies that they're building. But they also have a way for you to contribute features and featurettes, if you will. And they do require people with different set of programming skills, going from Python to Java to Android and things like that. So you can get more information on that on our website. And then open source is something I'm very excited about, because this is how we can really make the process of transitioning into contributing in the open source community easier, right? And this year we got some fantastic organizations participating, actually. So we have Google Chrome. We have FreeBSD, that you might know is sort of a more advanced operating system, and they'll tell you how to sort of contribute there. GitHub, as you would know, is sort of emerging as one of the de facto techniques or mechanisms, if you will, to share and to contribute code. So it really lets you create this code repository that may be started by somebody, and then others could start contributing into that. And then when you actually want to contribute into it, you pull and clone the GitHub repository into your local computer, start contributing there, and push your changes upstream, and that gets merged into the global code base. So it does facilitate code sharing in our open source community very easy. And Linux Foundation. So Linux is how I got started with open source, right? So as part of my work back in school, I started working with the Linux kernel. It was kind of fantastic to get a feel for that. Some of my code is in the Linux kernel today, so it's a great feeling. It's the biggest open source operating system that runs in everything from like the operating system in your airline. If you've traveled like internationally and you have actually seen movies and stuff like that show up in a little screen, that's running Linux, right? Linux has been running some of the biggest servers today, so it has like the entire gamut of deployment today. And then OpenHatch is also, by the way, a fantastic way to get started with open source, because OpenHatch has some tracks for newcomers or newbies to get started. They have like this thing for easy bugs that new people could get started with. So it's a great way to get started with open source using this. So these one-on-one sessions are going to be presentations, and they're going to tell you a little bit more as to how to get started. So this is a good thing for you to consider if you're trying to get your feet wet in the water with open source. So with that, really, before we open it up to Q&A, I mean, it's really very. I think it's fantastic to be a programmer, because it's really a fantastic skill to have. Not just to have a sustainable form of making money to be able to travel and live well and all of that. I think it pays well, but at the same time, it also really helps you code for a better world using free and open source software. A lot of companies have have this philosophy embedded in the tools and technologies that they are developing, so it's being commercialized. And if you realize the way companies are hiring and recruiting these days, before they actually look at your resume, they would go out into the world and look at what contributions you have made into the open source world. They would actually look at your code. They would look at the quality of code. So it's a great way for you to get your resume out there in the code format, if you will. So you get those phone call interview calls and things like that to sort of get you started. Once you're graduated and you're looking for jobs. So great way to build your resume, great way to build your skill sets, great way to learn from fantastic programmers, because the best way to learn programming is actually by looking at the code that other great programmers have done, pick up tips and sort of best practices to do programming, and then incorporate that into your own programming skills and contribute that upstream into the open source community. And once you are there, once you have sort of harnessed all those skills, start contributing into all of this open source based not-for-profit projects that really need and could use the help of programmers like you and me. So with that, we'd like to open it up to Q&A. So I think it's after you, Tina and Elizabeth.
So for some reason, the Google Plus video didn't work, so I had to send the YouTube link So they're viewing it right now, but it might be a couple minutes lagged because they didn't get it right when it started, unless they're starting to watch it live. So it might take a couple minutes for them to start asking any questions they might have, because it took me like five minutes to get them like the actual video. So there's about 15 people watching right now. So anyone that's watching have any questions about open source or open source day, I'm looking at the Google Plus Q&A, so feel free to ask questions for Bithika or for Stuti. We can maybe wait a few minutes.
That's fine. We'll wait.
Okay. I'll let you know once
Okay.
we get some questions. We got about 17 viewers, so.
Well, Bithika, let me ask you a question. If I'm a student, what's a good way for me to get started in open source? Bithika?
Oh, she's muted herself.
You've muted yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, great. All right. So great question, Studi. And I think if I were a new person, how would I get started with open source? I would sort of lay out a few steps, right? So the first thing is you have to be able to marry your interest with what's out there. There's so many ways to contribute to open source. So the first thing is to actually pick a project that has that requires a programming language that you are familiar with, whether it's Java, Python, Android, whatever that is. But pick a project that has that programming language that you're familiar with, and then also find a project that kind of interests you, right? That interests you in terms of what they're doing, and you maybe want to build your skill sets that way. So once you've figured these two things out, I would say that just go into their website and see if they have ways for you to filter out some of the bugs that are easy enough and have been identified as easy enough for newbies to get started with. Maybe a one-line fix that they could get started with, so they could do that as a way to get their feet wet in the water. So that's fixing bugs is a great way to understand the environment, to get familiar with it. So if I were a new person, I'd really try to get started with filtering those bugs and see what I could sort of fix. And once that's in there, if the bug's gone through the selection process and it's been contributed back, you actually feel good that you have accomplished something, and then that really sets you into the momentum of being able to be able to do more. So I would just list those 3 or 4 steps as a quick and easy way to get started with open source. And in terms of some of the projects that are, by the way, very popular with new people, are projects like OpenHatch, who is participating with, who is doing a one-on-one session with the Open Source Day this year, right? There are other projects like Fedora and Mozilla, and OpenStack, Wikipedia, GNOME, Apache, Python. So all of these are great projects to get started with, because in their websites, they have actually created a separate track for you to easily identify some of these bugs that are meant for new people to go fix. So, for example, if you are in OpenStack, you could look for a track called Low-Hanging Fruit. They have identified the bugs there for new people to fix. Wikipedia has something tagged by easy, so you could look for the tag easy to fix bugs there. GNOME has, I think, a tag called GNOME Love. So that's sort of a good way for you to contribute to GNOME. So all of these are really good projects, and they have a good enough way for new people to get started with open source.
I have a question from Grace that's more for Stuti.
Oh, okay.
She says if you're on the open source waiting list, how do you find out like your status or if you're taken off, or what's the process for that?
That's right. We'll be letting you know in the next week or so whether or not a spot has opened up for you for the Codathon. So you will be receiving an email from the committee letting you know your status.
Okay. And now Wendy is asking Bithika. She said, I heard you mention something about Android open source and the session being one-on-one. Is that correct? Will it be like a mentoring session based on the interest of scholars? Or, I don't.
Interesting.
Did Rebecca or Stuki talk about this?
Yeah, I talked about it. So I know that one of the projects, I think it's Instead's doing something with Android. And let me just quickly go back to my slides to see. I think they were doing Codathon, if I'm not mistaken. Give me a minute. Let me just quickly look it up.
Because Bithika Instead is in the Codathon.
In the Codathon, right? So Instead is on the Codathon, and Stuti, if I'm right, I think the organizations are actually planning to do some kind of a training session with the participants ahead of the Open Source Day, right? I think they're thinking about that at least.
For as far as the Codathon orgs?
Yeah, Codathon orgs.
They're doing a training session for participants who have RSVP'd.
Yes.
Now that said, some of the 101 sessions may have a little bit of kind of a tutorial towards the end of their presentation, you know, just for like 5 or 10 minutes of a tutorial for their particular platform or product. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hope that answered your question.
Let's see if there's more. Wendy says, can we still register for open source?
So on Open Source Day, as I said previously, we have 2 different tracks. So the 101 sessions you do not need to register for or RSVP for. Those are open to everybody's first come, first serve. And for the Codathon, it is currently sold out, and we have a waiting list. So for that, previously you had to register or RSVP, but we have an extensive waiting list currently. But like I said, the 101 sessions, you do not need to RSVP. It's first come, first serve.
Shaz says, she asked the same question as Stuti, what's a good way to start in open source, but she said more specifically, like, how do you select a project, or how do you specify what you want to do, because it's pretty broad, I guess.
Yeah, it is pretty broad. And if you know, I think there are some projects that are really good for new people. I did talk about that a little bit, but if I were to list them, right, projects like GitHub, Django, Python, Apache, GNOME, Wikipedia, OpenStack, OpenHatch, these are all good projects. And I know I'm sort of speaking through them, but if I could, if there is a way to sort of type this information out to you or send that information out to you, I'd actually like to take advantage of that, Tina. So let me know if there is a channel to do that. But there are like 8 or 10 organizations or projects that are really good for someone trying to get started with open source. And if I were to put a framework around how do you really pick a project, just look at this list and see if they have a requirement for a skill, like a programming language that you are already familiar with, Java, Python, whatever that may be. So pick that, because that'll be easier for you to get started with it. And then also see if the work that they're doing is in your general interest in terms of the way you're trying to build your resume, or the way you're trying to land a job, or what you really want to do with the skill. So see if there's an interest there, and see if it matches with your skill sets. And then once you've identified that and narrowed down that list, just go to their website and just pick up a few bugs that they have identified as easy enough for a new person to get started with. And most of these projects that I have listed have a track for new people. And just fix 1 or 2 bugs that will get you a feel for the development environment, and a feel for the project itself. And it'll just be cruise mode from there. So that would be a framework that I'd follow in terms of how to get started.
Tina, did you have an answer for like how she could get information out to scholars, or?
Yeah. Do you have a consolidated sort of list of those places where they could go?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay, then if you share that with us, we can post it on the Facebook group and put a link to it maybe on the website as a resource from this hangout.
Okay,
Uh,
I'll do that.
the other thing, I just wanted to go back to the question that was asked, I think maybe one before that. I think there's maybe some confusion between a one-on-one, like one-to-one session, and a 101 intro level session. So at Grace Hopper, there's going to be 101 sessions where they're sort of at an entry level and to give you an overview, and it doesn't mean that there's going to be one person for every attendee. So just wanted to clarify that.
Thanks, Tina. Yes, just like what Tina was talking about, the one-on-one sessions are presentation style. You will be in a large room listening to a presentation/tutorial, and that's right, they're called one-on-one sessions, and this is something new that we're trying this year with Open Source Day. Thanks, Tina.
And if I'll share where you can see it on the website, and hang on just a second. So
go on, Tina. Sorry.
If you go to the schedule, there's a list of open source, everything in the open source track, and some of these are the 101 sessions, right?
That's correct.
So Stu,
yeah.
what can they go to if they haven't registered? Because there's certain things you still can do, right?
That's correct. Bithika, can you go back to the presentation slide 5?
Yep.
Okay. So let's see here. In that slide, we have the different tracks listed. So if you haven't, so basically there are 2 different tracks. One are the 101 sessions, and then you have another track which is the Codathon. In order to participate in the Codathon, you need to RSVP, and we are sold out, and we do have a waiting list for the Codathon. But I do want to say that in the past we have had no-shows for the Codathon, so if you are very, very interested and keen to participate, I would suggest that you swing by, and perhaps, I'm sure that we're going to have some no-shows, and hopefully we'll have some slots open and you can jump in and participate. But again, there's no guarantee with that. Sorry. But the 101 sessions are running concurrently. They run from 12:30 to 4:30 off the top of my head. There will be 3 different sessions starting at the same time. But were you able to pull it back up? No?
Oh, yeah.
Slide 5?
Sorry, I thought I was sharing, but let me do it.
Okay.
Can you see it? No?
No. There we go. Thank you.
Sorry about it.
So as you can see on the slide, all the way on the right is the OSD Codathon, for which you do have to RSVP, and we are sold out. But running at the same time, we do have these 3 different sessions for the 101 sessions, and they're running from 12:30 to 4:30. Each one is an hour long, and you can see we have OpenHatch, FreeBSD, and Linux. GitHub, we know, is a very popular and that one is also running repeatedly throughout 12:30 to 4:30, as is Chromium. So if you are interested in open source, besides the Codathon, we do have these different channels or avenues where you can go and you can learn quite a bit about open source. Thanks, Bithika.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me think. So Dominique says, so even if we have very little coding experience, we could still participate in Open Source Day, or open source, I guess, in general, too?
Yeah, Dominic, so I can answer that question. You absolutely can. I hope that you are either registered for a Codeathon organization, or you are coming to one of those one-on-one sessions. But if you do come to either one of those, I can guarantee you. I mean, the one-on-one session especially will be uh, very easy for you to get a feel for what's going on with Linux Foundation. How do you contribute to Linux? How do you fix a bug there, right? Things like that. And with the Codeathon, it actually get a more hands-on experience. But either way, this would be a great way for you to orient yourself with open source. And even if you're not able to come to any of these, I'll send out the resources out after this call. You can just grab any project from that list and just pick it up. Just fix a one-line bug. You know, it would probably take you maybe half a day or a day, but it's as simple as that. Just get started, and you know, sometimes the best way to get started is actually to do it. So it's really very simple.
And like Vithika said, the one-on-one sessions are a fantastic way to get started with open source. They are geared towards beginners, so you don't necessarily need to have extensive experience with open source software.
Lele said, would you please send us the list Vithika was talking about in an email? And just to answer that, yeah, once we get that, I can send that out in an email along with putting it on the Facebook group so you guys can have access to that. Let's see. So Harshada also is asking Vithika if we could have access to the slides that you made. Maybe you can email the slides to me or Tina, and we could share those as well if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm okay with that.
Cool.
And I also want to say that if anyone had any follow-up questions, we also have a mailing list. What is it called? So it's GHC-OSD-014 or...
It's very long.
I'll send you in that email, where I send you the list, I'll also send you the mailing list. They can definitely post questions there too.
So Shah says, isn't bug fixing apparently more difficult for a newbie? Normally those who are developing already would be more able to fix bugs than those who haven't or are just starting?
Actually, I mean, unfortunately, the answer to that question is depends. And I'm saying depends because there are some bugs that are really very easy. For example, you might just have to fix a text field that shows up in the front end that you are using for your development, right? So it just doing a string search for that specific string and replacing that in a specific field, and then compiling, and then you will actually see that your change has taken effect. So that's a very simple thing to fix, right? Now, having said that, there are some bugs that are obviously more difficult to fix because you have to first identify what the bug is. Where is the bug, right? So I think bugs really come in a very wide range. And fortunately enough, for some of these organizations projects that I mentioned, they actually have bugs that are very well identified for new people. So if you look at one of those, that would be a great way. Because the thing is, even though it's a one-line fix and it's a simple fix, but you still have to install the development environment, pull the code, figure out how to walk through it, and make the changes, compile and push it. So you learn the entire process. But in that process, while learning the process, you sort of fixed something. And once you have done that, you sort of use the same environment for your development as well. So it's a great way to get started. But having said that, there is nothing that's going to prevent you from obviously looking to contribute to a feature or two. But yeah, you could do both. But yeah, bugs definitely they come in a wide range in terms of complexity.
Wendy said, are the projects that you were talking about by levels of difficulty, or classified? Maybe she's talking about the open source projects.
Yeah. So if it's an open source project, it's the list that we shared with you. It's not in any range of difficulty. And if I'm not mistaken, Stuti, I think they on the specific web pages for the projects, they have, I think, specified the skills that they need and the level of experience that they need.
That's correct.
Yeah, so I think you can get a feel for that there as well. But I've participated in the open source day for quite a few years now. I've been a programmer, I've been on the other side of the table. And people are actually, the organizations are it's a very comforting and fuzzy feeling because no one's going to judge you for something that you don't know. In fact, that's the expectation, that you're here to learn as well while learning to contribute. So it's very forgiving and a very comfortable way for you to get your feet wet in the water. So even if you are not experienced, it's totally fine to come there and learn and say that you don't know and you're looking to learn.
Namrata asks, is there any recommended programming language for open source project like C++ or Java or C? What is the number sign? Or does it depend on the project?
I think it depends on the project, but if you know C++, C or Java, I think you have like half of those projects covered already, because a lot of them need that. There are some scripting knowledge requirements like Python and others. They need some scripting capabilities, but most of it is, a lot of it is C and Java based. So yeah, and I know that that's taught a lot in schools too. So yeah, I think you should be good.
So that's all the questions they had, but they might pop up with some more. But did you have any questions you wanted to ask them, or anything else you wanted to talk about, just open source in general, or Stuti also?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would have loved to get a sense of the audience that's hanging out, right, in this Google Hangout, to get a sense of if they have contributed to open source, at what phase they are in, and that would have definitely helped me customize the presentation a little better. But I think that's fine. If they have any follow-up questions, would love for them to post that on our Google Groups. And whether they're coming to Open Source Day or not, I'm really looking forward to seeing each of them contributing to open source.
Cool. Yeah. And I just want to say, I know that there are a lot of different ways at Grace Hopper to learn about open source besides the Codeathon. Of course, there are the 101 sessions we've talked about before. With the different organizations participating in that. And then there's also, again, the lunchtime table topics, which is a more intimate setting during lunchtime where you can, ask mentors from these participating orgs, such as Sahana and Instead, etc., more questions about some of their projects. So the lunchtime table topics are also a great resource for, for a more intimate setting if you have any questions about open source projects or open source in general. It's a great resource too.
Are those just on Wednesday, or do
No, those are the lunchtime table topics are on Thursday and Friday. I believe it's on I think the slide is still up. It's yes, 1 p.m. to 2:15 p.m.
I don't know if there's anything else.
Okay.
Well, thank you both so much for joining us this morning. It's great to have you talk about these things with the scholars and give them more information than I could about it.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Vithika.
Thank you.
And thank you for inviting us, Tina and Elizabeth. We really had this was a lot of fun, and we would love to contribute to your office hours again next year for GHC 2015.
All right. Before we go, I'll just remind the scholars that are watching that we do have a couple more hangouts coming up. We have networking with Barb Gee, our Vice President of Programs, on the 24th, again at 9 a.m. Pacific time, and we have another one with Elizabeth and I for any last-minute questions that you have on the 30th at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And all of those are listed on the logistics page for scholars, so make sure you're reading that, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, everyone. Bye. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Okay.